What's going on, guys? Jay Hoyd back with you today. Welcome back to episode number 12 of our franchise mode with the Anaheim Ducks. So we are back here at the start of the off season after another disappointing end of the year. But also, like, we're what, 2 years into it, 3 years into it, something like that. So you know, we're not really expected to do much at this point. We're mainly gearing on like year 5. That once we get kind of our team figured out, get the young guns in the lineup, and kind of take care of our salary cap issues, then we'll be on the right track. But for now, you know, this is all kind of an added bonus. We're making the playoffs. We're at least putting up somewhat of a test, not necessarily getting, you know, absolutely destroyed. You know, the last round we made it to the second round. So we're doing okay, right? I know this is supposed to be a rebuild, but at the same time, we're doing really well. So we do have a plan going into this offseason. Let's get up my notes. And before this video gets into the offseason, we do want to mention we have 2 notable contract extensions. And I actually forgot I did them. But we actually signed 2 players, like I said. First one, I guess, being the more notable one in Sorokin. Now, obviously, we acquired him at the deadline. He's going to play a big part of our future as a number 1 goaltender. Him and Dostal will most likely be our 2 goaltenders in the NHL. So hopefully those guys can work together really well. But we did re-sign him to 1 year, $8 million. Now, the only reason I didn't sign him long-term was just in case he doesn't perform well, he doesn't, doesn't show up how we know he can show up on our team. Now, also, we're going through still a rebuild. So at the same time, he wanted an 8-year deal at like $8 or even $9 million. And now, not that that's a bad contract or a bad deal for a superstar goaltender, but at the same time, that's a lot of money to invest in a goaltender of I'll say a retooling team, because I feel like given our performance on the ice, we're not necessarily rebuilding at this point because we are making the playoffs. So I'll say retooling team. So we did, like I said, Sorokin, 1 year, $8 million. Now, obviously, Dostal's there, so whether he takes over the net or whether it's Sorokin, whatever happens in our goaltender situation, I didn't want to invest that much money in him long term. Second one is actually a great deal for the organization, for the player, and especially for future. Mason, I think it's Mason McTavish, what was our second line center last year, played alongside Pacioretty and Perreault. 5-year deal, $2.75 million. I was very surprised to see him sign that contract. He won, I think, a tad bit more than that, like 2.9 or even $3 million. But he did accept that, like I said, $2.75 mil at 5 years. So that'll take him to, I think he's like 22, so it's like 27 years old. And then, obviously, depending on what we do at that time, we have a good centerman, and we signed him, I'll say long-term. 5 years is long-term. But 2 of our bigger names that were up for new contracts this year, we ended up getting. Now, before we get into, the end of the year here or start of the playoffs, is we do have some players on the trade block. Now, one of them actually is not on here. There we go. We fixed it. So let me move me out of the way. We'll move over here temporarily. But it is the players on your screen. So we'll start with Pacioretty. Now, Pacioretty, although I'd love to re-sign him, he's going to want like $6 million. And just given our left wing situation, we might find another similar deal, right? The 1 year, $1.5 million, maybe even $2 million, 2.5, something for an absolute steal of a player. But also at the same time, we still have Bertuzzi, we still have DeBrusk, and we do have Tracy that's waiting for a spot in the NHL. So that might be his time to come up here and perform. Ben, 4th line left wing, he still wants a decent sized contract, so we're not going to re-sign him, right? Just too much money for a 4th liner. Jonathan Taves. Now, I did make some notes on him. So he has been playing as our fourth line center. He had a massive year on the fourth line with, like, what was it, 42 points, something like that. But he still has one more year at $2.5 million. Now, not that that's a bad deal by any stretch, given what Jonathan Taves can do on the ice. But he does have a little bit of trade value on him, so we might be able to throw him in. And given the trade, or not the trade pool, the draft pool this year, there's a lot of really good prospects early second round. So we might even end up trading back to try to get some even more assets for the draft. And Taves might end up being one of them, try to trade for at least a second round pick, early second round pick, and try to get a notable player. Now, a lot of those players are NHL ready or within like a year or two. So, we want that, right? We want players that could play now, they could fill in the lineup. And if we could do what we want to do, we're going to be acquiring like 5 second round picks, which is going to be very hard to do, but we're going to try to do it. And Taves might be one of them. And then our next player is actually also not on the list. Well, I guess we'll go bottom up here, but JT, I think it's JT Compher or Jay Compher. Fourth line right wing, he definitely is not a fourth line right wing. But given our right wing situation with Terry, Perreault, and Mercer, that he's not going to move up anytime soon. And, we could definitely use that money for something else. We could definitely use the trade value. Like I said, trying to acquire another second round pick and get some of those players. And like I said, he's very unlikely to move up the lineup at all, if at all, I should say. And also to get $3.5 million off the books. So between him and Taves, that'd be $6 million off the books that we could put somewhere else, that we could sign a more notable player or a better player overall. And especially given some of our younger talent is going to start wanting some big contracts, we're going to need all the money we can get. So we did that, yeah, $3.5 million, 2 more years on him. So again, he's not going to move up. $3 million for a fourth liner is just, again, similar to Taves is, I love what they do on the ice. I love what they bring. But at the same time, we could use that money somewhere else. The last one being John Klingberg. 32 years old, necessarily isn't that old, but still 83 overall, $7.5 million for 2 more years on his contract. With Fabro's performance last year and with Drysdale, obviously we want him to be the superstar right defenseman. We need him gone. And also $7.5 million. So between all of them, that's like $13 million off the books for next year. Now, like I said, we could definitely sign some other players to fill in that gap if we need to. But it'd mainly be a salary dump. He does have a little bit of trade value. And again, if we're going to try to get all those second round picks, all the trade value is going to be huge. So without further ado, let's get into the draft and show you guys what we've been talking about with the draft. So we, I think, are scheduled at 25th overall, I believe. So obviously not for a while, but obviously we have a lot of the franchise players up at the beginning. But if you go down to 25, I think it's 25, is a lot of these players, look at one of these guys, doesn't really have much information on them. That's partly our fault, right? We don't really take scouting super as serious as we could to try to get all these guys fully scouted. But even some of the guys that we can scout, it does say like 2 years, but still B's and C's across the board, which means they're probably like 3+ years out. And not that that's a bad thing. Obviously, that's kind of average for what prospects take. We look at some of these guys like B's, C's, 4 years, 3 to 5 years. If we look even farther down, right, early in the second round, let's look at some of these players. Now, when you look at this, you see 50 games played, 2 points. That's not that great. 32 penalty minutes, okay, whatever. +2, whatever. Time on ice, whatever. But then you look at the A's, the B's, the elite speed, the skating, the mobility, the NHL ready. Similar style to NHL legend in Brian Leetch with X factors in the game. Then it's like, okay, a right-hand defenseman. We're going to be getting rid of Klingberg. Like, now we're starting to be on the same page here. Similar thing here. Heno, you look at his points, not necessarily great, but also with the European leagues, points aren't really their thing, right? You could have a great player come out and get 30 points in a 60-game season, and he be one of the best players in the league. Like, it just doesn't really make sense. But then you look at the B's, the A's, ready in 2 years, right? You look at all this stuff, and it's like, okay, but that's not all. You keep going. Left wing, again, NLA, Europe, doesn't necessarily look that great, but then you see A's and B's and everything else, NHL ready. We need a left wing, right? You see what I'm saying? You keep going down. Same thing with the goaltender. Actually has pretty good stats here in the QMJHL, in the juniors. A's across the board, 2 years on him. Now, obviously, we have Soroka, we have Dostal, but we also have to look at the 5 to 10 year range where we could possibly need a goaltender. So he's got X factors across the board. You think we're done? We're still going. Centerman, same thing. A's and B's across the board, 2 years. I think there might be one more down here. Another centerman, 6'6", A's almost and B's across the board with 1 C, but still 2 years on him. So there are lots of players that are available. Hopefully we can get a few of them. It would definitely help us out in the long term. So the best we could do for Jonathan Toews is ended up being 2 third-round draft picks, one being this year, one being next year from the Islanders. Whether it was a mix of prospects and later picks, this was the best deal we could have taken. Plus, it gets us the more draft picks that we could end up throwing in other trades. So let's make that go through. There it is. Let's keep working. So our next trade, I'm not sure if this is going to go through or not, but we're going to try trading back our first round pick this year in exchange for 2 early round seconds. Now, these might have to get traded up a little bit, but it's going to be a lot easier trading up a couple spots with the 2 second rounders than with, like a couple thirds, a prospect, and a lot of other bullcrap. So we're going to try to trade this. Now, we might have to up our value a little bit, but hopefully this does go through. So we added a 3rd and a 6th from our side in exchange for both the seconds. So that is pretty huge for us, right? Because we have now 2 early picks. And I'm going to try to see if we need to trade those up anymore and kind of see how early we need to be in the second round. Not sure how well this is going to work out, but let's try to trade a 3rd round pick and Klingberg to Washington for a 1st round draft pick. And add in a 5th round pick, and it works. So we're going to try a similar move to the Washington trade with Klingberg and getting the 30, whatever it was, overall pick. Will it work for the Devils? There it is. That's a huge trade. If you guys go back and look at that, we get rid of a 3rd round pick, for basically 2 random prospects that we were probably not going to re-sign, and a 7th round pick for a 2nd round pick. So we are 1 step closer to acquiring all 5 of our players. So we're going to end up trying this 1 for 1. I tried to get an extra picks from them, but I also just realized I'm trying to trade up. So I'm going to have to put in more value. But will it go through 1 for 1? It does not. And there it is. So an extra 7th round pick from us gets us to trade up by 3 spots. If we're able to acquire the 36th overall pick, we will be able to get all 5 of our guys. So let's try to get this trade done. So I did try to find trade just to see what they would want. They want a 2nd and a 3rd. Now, obviously, I don't want to give them a 2nd and a 3rd, but what about a 2nd and a 4th? That will go through. I probably should have tried even less than that, but both those picks are from next year. We do have 2 thirds next year, so I'm not really too worried about it, but that does check it off. If you take a look, not that one, we go to all of our trades. We have the 32nd, the 33rd, the 34th, the 35th, and the 36th. So we can get all 5 of the players we are interested in. Well, I made the joke and I wasn't even recording. I paused it. But at the 32nd overall pick, we end up getting Jesus Bentley as our right defenseman of choice, 2-way defender. His stats look good across the board, 77 overall, so he's right there. He'll probably get a good chance in the preseason. Top 4 medium potential, so obviously that's a huge pick. Second pick of us, of course, Samu Haino. Similar thing, but not necessarily as good as overall. 17 years old, 69 overall, top 4 medium potential. Stats look a little bit good, but still a little bit underdeveloped, obviously, being that lower overall. He'll get there with probably a couple years in the, I guess, back in the Liga, or Liga, right? I think it was, wherever he came from. Yeah, the Liga. and he'll probably get a couple years more development there before he ends up coming over. But we're going to continue on with our next pick being Zane Lannon from the NLA. Of course, all the A's and B's across the board. It does say he's NHL ready. We'll see about that. Let's draft him. 76 overall, two-way defenseman. Two-way forward. Looks good. Skating's there. Defense is there. Puck skills are there. Everything seems to be there from what we want. So that's good. Definitely pretty excited about that. Top 6 medium potential. Again, really happy about that. We definitely made some big moves this offseason. We got rid of almost everyone we wanted. We'll take that. On to our next one. Who's our next one? Gabriel Dangle. I'm going to go with Diagle. I don't know how to pronounce it. But this is the goaltender with A's across the board. Ready in 2 years. Playing in the juniors. And given our already stacked goaltender pool, 70 overall, medium elite potential. Like I said, we will take that for sure. So he'll probably go right back to juniors for next year. With all of the X factors, he's definitely going to be a big part of our future for sure. And our last pick at 36 overall, although there is someone else down there, we could take a pick at who we wanted to get, but we'll probably end up going, very rarely do you get a 6'6" centerman that actually ends up performing really well for a long time. So we're going to go with Lars Helmerson from the SHL, A's and B's across the board. We'll go with him. So there it is. So center sniper, which is something I don't feel like I see a lot. Not very physical, but again, if he's a sniper, he's not really going to be doing much physical anyway. But of course, under developed so far, he'll probably go back to juniors as well. But I mean, we made a big splash here. We got kind of everyone that we wanted. We got rid of all of the people that we wanted to. And we should be in for a good rest of the offseason. Well, let's finish out the draft. If anything exciting, obviously you'll see it. If not, we'll see it in the re-sign stage. I mean, if we're going to make a big splash and we try to see if there's any potential trades out there, I feel like we should explore this one. Nikolai Ehlers, hello, 90 overall, 29 years old, pending UFA. Scored 110 points last year. And is a superstar player. I feel like we got to explore this one. Now, what we'd be giving up in this trade, now obviously the value here is completely different if Ehlers was under a contract. But Lindgren, now although if we take a look at our defensive core here, we do have Mikarov, whatever the heck his name is. But we can get someone else that's similar to him. But at the same time, players like Ehlers don't come around very often. So, not that he's so easily replaceable, but also he kind of is. And I wouldn't necessarily be super upset about it. Because right now, he would be playing third line with him there. So, with the amount of players that we could call up or sign this offseason to make it worth it, I feel like we should. Then also they want Colin White, who's a fourth line right wing for us that, we may or may not have re-signed, that we can always find someone to replace him. I feel like that's pretty much an easy trade, right? So with the amount of young players and now him, I think we'll be in a really good spot for next year. So here we are after making the massive splash in the off-season drafts, pretty much the draft with obviously our 5 big, acquisitions or draftees, draft picks, whatever you want to call them, along with getting Nikolai Ehlers from that trade. Now, like I said, I wasn't really planning on making any other trades, just kind of seeing what was out there, what his value was worth, and then they came up with that, and I'm like, well, that's got to be something I look into. So here we go. So into the off-season now, we're going to take this slowly and kind of figure out what we want to do. Now we're going to focus mainly on our NHL roster, and obviously I'll fill in the AHL as needed. So Patrick in this case wants a good sized contract at $6 million. And now, especially now that we have Ehlers, There's not going to be really room for him here with Bertuzzi and DeBrusque also there. So, Pacioretty, thank you for your big performance from us, or for us, I should say, as a very late acquisition, free agency, almost start of the year, coming off I would say a decent performance in New York, but after Carolina's good performance with 63 points, had a rough year in New York, bounced right back. I mean, we kind of helped him out in a way, but unfortunately, we cannot keep you. Jamie Benn, again, actually has lowered his asking price, but he's not going to want to sign a $1 million, $1.25 million deal. Plus with Tracy there, along with, players we can get. Again, thank you for your contribution since the deadline, but we're going to have to move on from you. Now, the real question is Nikolai Ehlers. What do you want? $10 million. Okay, so this might be try to sign him for a 1 year, try to, get a reasonable contract, maybe like a 5-year deal, once this year rolls along. And so we'll have to keep working on that one. So we're going to try to sign him $8.5, maybe $9 million and go from there. Now, although Fleury doesn't want a crazy contract, a little bit less than last year, obviously we know what the writing on the wall after that season was. It was going to be Sorokin and Dostal. Again, thank you for your big performance last year, Fleury. You did the best you could, but at the end of the day, it's just time to move on from him. Obviously, a very big class act for Fleury. But at the end of the day, it was going to be Dostal. It was going to be Sorokin and net. I forgot we did sign Solaris to an extra year. So I'm not sure where he's going to fit in. But we're going to get our AHL team sorted and get to free agency. So as we entered into free agency this year, we actually got pretty lucky. So as far as our needs for this offseason, we don't really have a lot. So we have enough forwards that we have enough guarantees on our roster that we could fill our roster easily with players. Now, there is a couple players that are like on the bubble, high 70s overall, that we could easily put in a battle of who wants the spot more and see who plays better with whatever line mates and go into the preseason battle with and go from there. Now, the other thing, on the other hand, is we have $17 million we can spend at the same time. And not that we, like I said, not that we really need anything desperately. So we might be able to spend some money here and there if we really wanted to. But at the same time, we don't need to spend money just to spend money. Like, there'd be no point to doing that. So we made one offer so far to I'll say AHL right wing. But other than that, we've been kind of quiet. I mean, obviously it's day one, but we'll go from there. So as of right now, we might make one, maybe two minor signings, but really, there's nothing big going on right now. So at the end of our figuring out what we actually need, we made two offers. I guess one is RFA, so we might not even get him, but he'd be a AHL piece anyway. And then also we made an offer to Cody Glass, who's an 82 overall, 26-year-old centerman, who I offered 1 year, $1 million. It's way under what he wanted, but if we get him, great. If not, I'm not really too worried. And also we made an offer to Esa Lindell, 85 overall left-hand defenseman, fits in all of our lines perfectly, and he wanted like $5-point-something million. We offered him 2 years at $6 million, a little bit over his asking price. Like I said, we have the money to spend, so I'm not really super worried. And plus, 2-year deal, not that long. So if that works out, then great. If not, like I said, not too worried. So there is our first big signing, Esa Lindell, still don't know how to pronounce it. But like I said, 2 years, $6 million. He's going to go on the back end, obviously, help out the rest of our crew. Still waiting to hear back on one more player. So this is how our preseason lineup is going to start. Now, although this year we don't have a lot of players that are going to be fighting for spots, we do have a few. And like I said, we didn't really make any big splashes in free agency. We got one player, Lindell. But after him, we didn't really sign anybody, mainly because we wanted some of the younger players to jump up there and perform and go from there. And that's happening. Our entire fourth line all played in the AHL last year, and we're here, right? Obviously with Ehlers on the first line there, we have a pretty well-rounded lineup. And like I said, this is how it's going to start. How it's going to finish, we'll wait and figure it out. But Tracy up here, finally, 82 overall, 24 years old. We want him to perform. We will have to figure out where he fits best. Same thing with Bowers, same thing with King. Both young players that are looking for spots. Both will probably stay on the fourth line, I would assume, throughout given the rest of our lineup. Defensively, we look a lot different starting this preseason, and basically everyone is brand new. Now, obviously, we still have everybody else, but we signed 2 of our young defensemen to contracts. I didn't do that during the free agency period or during the re-sign stage, just kind of given what I wanted to do going this year. We called up some of our AHL guys that are all 79, 80 overall. So some of those guys are up here. We're going to see if they can work it out, see how our young players do. And, of course, the big battle, I think, this year will be in net. Dostal and Sorokin. Not that I want to send Dostal down, but if he just, plain up sucks in the preseason, we have Stellaris up here. He performs well in the couple of games we're going to give him. Then we'll see what happens. But given his stats recently, he's gotten better every single year in the last 3 years at least. So, I have no doubts really over our guys. We got obviously the guys scratched for now that obviously will most likely be in our lineup. So this is how it's going to start. Like I said, how it's going to finish is going to be a different story given the preseason battles. But as far as the rest of the preseason, we'll wait and see how everything turns out in the next episode when we start at, year 3, year 4, whatever it may be. It's going to be a good year regardless. Big splash during the offseason this year, whether it was draft picks, the trades, whatever it may be, we had a big splash. But like I said, guys, that's going to do it for today's video. If you did enjoy, hit the like button down below if you haven't yet, or if you're brand new here, make sure to subscribe, turn those post notifications on so you never miss an upload, and don't forget, you can always change your mind later. With all that being said, guys, we'll see you in the next one.